देवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयामुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनं शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुर्वैष्णवां च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितां तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितां च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम पदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful Mangalacharan recital. It was so beautiful. Thank you, Prabhuji, for it. So Hare Krishna, Mataji. Done with pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for joining in. Today, I know you have had a very busy Saturday. You've just logged off from work and joined us. And in spite of a short notice about the verse, and we really apologize, you have agreed to take this session today. So Mataji, we are really eternally grateful to you. We really look forward to your classes and we never want to miss it. That's why thank you for joining us. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 3, but today we start a new chapter, Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is the manifestations of Brahma from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And we start from text 1. So over to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much again for giving me the opportunity to do the service. And it's entirely my fault, that I really didn't get time to prepare this verse, this very important verse. So sincere apologies in advance to all of you, because there are many senior devotees over here in this forum. Sincere apologies to all, as if there's anything lacking, please do contribute, because I genuinely didn't have much time to prepare today, so apologies in advance for that. And if I go wrong anywhere, please do correct me. May I just first start with just saying just how beautifully Mahamand Das Prabhuji just did the Mangalacharan. It was just so beautiful, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. So as Mataji, as Kirtika Mataji has said, we are starting chapter 8 today, Canto 3, chapter 8, and our verse is verse number 1 today. And before I start, I pay my humble obeisances to my Guru. Without his mercy, I wouldn't have been able to do the mercy. My prayers to Radharani and Krishna and Gaurnitai, whatever they make me speak, hopefully I'll be able to speak things proper. And my prayers to and my humble obeisances to all of you for giving me the opportunity to do the service for you and for Guru and Govinda. Hare Krishna. So just to okay, so I will read the verse first, and then the purport, and then we'll go into a bit of discussion. And as I said, if I'm going wrong anywhere, please do correct me, because I didn't have time to prepare much. Okay, but eternally grateful to Mataji's and Prabhuji's for giving me this opportunity. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Maitreya Uvacha. Satsevaniya Bhata Puru Vamsho Yad Lokapalo Bhagavat Pradhana Bhabhuvite Hajita Kirti Malam Pade Pade Nutanasi Abhiksham. Translation. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer every moment. But just give me a second. I think it's a problem over here. Okay. Right, okay. So the pulpit says, the great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious. Because they were not attached to impersonal Brahman or to the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, they were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. Hare Krishna. So before we start our discussion, just from the verse and the purport, if I may please draw your attention to a few points which we can look into as we are discussing. So obviously, we see Maitreya Muni now glorifying Vidura. And he also talks about the royal dynasty of King Puru. So that's the first bit of the verse where Maitreya Muni is relating his talking to Vidura and referring to the fact that he's from the royal dynasty of King Puru, and the word, it's worthy to serve, the pure devotees, and the reference that dynasty, they are pure devotees. And in the purport, Prabhupada further expands on that, saying that they are pure devotees because they are not really attached to the impersonal Brahman, but they are directly attached to Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord. Okay, and so we see a kind of reference to Vidura, who Vidura is. What do we really mean by pure devotees? What do we really mean by, people who are worthy to be served as pure devotees, and why Maitreya Muni is glorifying Vidura to be a descendant of that? So he's touching upon that again. So we have talked about, in the previous chapters, we've seen Vidura being glorified quite a lot, and we got to know a lot about Vidura. We are starting a new chapter. We are seeing how Maitreya Muni is touching upon that as well, and reiterating the fact as to why it should be mentioned, and it should be remembered once again that Vidura comes from a great dynasty of true devotees, and he himself is one of them. The second part of the verse talks about, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord and how they become newer and newer every moment. And when Prabhupada expands that in the purport, you would see that Prabhupada talks about how Maitreya Muni felt happy to have such a glorious company as Vidura, and how he thought that Vidura's company is most desirable, because such, and the last line of the purport says that such association can accelerate one's dormant propensity for devotional service. So these are some of the points that we will be touching upon as we do our discussion today. That who is Vidura? Why is he called a great devotee again? Why is he being glorified? Again, right at the start of this chapter, and how being a true devotee really, or how being in touch with their true devotee accelerates one's devotional service, as Maitreya Muni is reiterating again. If you remember in the last chapter, when Vidura started asking Maitreya Muni questions, for a second Maitreya Muni closed his eyes, because initially he was just, a bit, he was wondering as to why is Vidura asking him such questions, and then he closed his eyes and he smiled and he opened them again, and they started their conversation, and where we touched upon the fact that yes, Maitreya Muni recognizes the fact that by talking about the Lord's glories, how it becomes more and more and more relishing as we talk more and more about them. So chapter 8 is the manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So these, as we mentioned just now, so these are the topics which have been mentioned in the verse and the purport, and we will be looking into briefly today. So chapter 8 is, the title of the chapter is Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And of that, verses 1 to 9 talks about the disciplic succession of in Srimad Bhagavatam, where particularly in verse 1, Maitreya Muni acknowledges Vidura by glorifying him and saying that you have come from the illustrious and devotional dynasty of Puru. And so in the last chapter, we see how Vidura further asks questions to Maitreya Muni very, very eagerly. And all the questions, all the inquiries connected to Krishna. And in this chapter, we will see how the answers are being how Maitreya Muni is starting to give the answers. And he does so initially, firstly, by glorifying Vidura himself. And he glorifies Vidura by saying that, you come from the Vamsa, or the lineage, or the dynasty of King Puru. Actually, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is one chapter by the name, which talks about the whole dynasty of King Kuru. And we will notice, we will see how King Kuru also come in that dynasty. And obviously in the dynasty of King Kuru, we have the Pandavas appearing. We know how great devotees the Pandavas were. And in that Vamsa, in that lineage, in that dynasty of the Kuru, obviously there is Vidura as well. And we are told right at the beginning in the verse that this dynasty, they are worthy and they are pure devotees. Now, who are these pure devotees? In the last class when we were talking, and in the previous session as well, we've been talking about raga nuga bhakti, the spontaneous bhakti. We've talked about sadhana bhakti, where if it is Vaidhi bhakti, we have talked about how Vaidhi bhakti is where you practice devotional service, but it is more of a service based on rules and regulations and the do's and don'ts, and you just follow certain principles to be able to serve the Lord. Whereas when it comes to Raganuga Bhakti, we look at more spontaneous bhakti, where the intention and the intent to serve the Lord is spontaneous, and where the Lord comes before the wants and the desires of an individual soul. And it goes to a point, when we were talking about the rasas, it goes to a point where just serving the Lord becomes a personal greed. Whereas greed in the material world is very, very materialistic and is more towards satisfying one's senses, when it reaches the Raganuga stage and when it becomes absolutely, spontaneous bhakti, the greed becomes only to be able to serve the Lord more and more. And we talked about, how in the rasas last week, how, just getting into even the initial rasa, we talk about, the rasas having that unique relationship with Krishna in one of those 5 main rasas. That only starts happening once we reach that spontaneous state. So we are talking about pure devotees who are worthy of, being to be associated with. We are talking about that stage. We are talking about the stage where devotion or love for Krishna is spontaneous. And love for Krishna is based on that, that unique relationship with Krishna, that one-to-one relationship with Krishna, whichever rasa it may be, Shantadasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya rasa. And we saw, in our talk last week, when we were talking about the exchange between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Raya, how the topmost rasa, the Madhurya rasa, that Radharani shows towards Krishna, was proclaimed as the best way to serve Krishna. So what is that pure devotee? Why is Maitreya talking about, establishing the fact that Vidura, he has his own unique relationship with Krishna. We know of the very famous pastime of, how his wife was feeding banana peels to Krishna, and in her devotional ecstasy. So that is Vidura. That's his wife. That's how they are. And we see why Krishna is, and why all discussions about devotion basically starts with this kind of spontaneous love for Krishna. And why is it important to mention such love for Krishna? What is the reason that this is mentioned? It is mentioned not because the worthy devotees want to be glorified, as Maitreya Muni is glorifying Vidura over here, but it is because Krishna wants the devotees to be glorified. It's said that once in Dwarka, when Narad Muni was visiting Dwarka, now Krishna had 16,108 wives. And at the same time, Krishna would be present at all the palaces, doing different duties in the different palaces. So so he would be present simultaneously as he was in the rasa during the rasa dance, or during when Lord Brahma kidnapped all his friends and the calves. Krishna expanded, so Krishna was in all the palaces. But this time, Narad Muni, when he visited Dwarka and he got into the first palace, he went to where Mother Rukmini was staying, and he didn't see Krishna. He was a bit surprised. He went to the next palace, he didn't see Krishna. So all the palaces, Krishna was nowhere to be seen. And so Narad Muni was just wondering, and then he walked out of the palaces and he goes further a bit outside the city, and he saw in a quiet place, he saw in a tiny hut with a little bit of light coming from within, from inside. And he very curiously, Narad Muni goes over there and he sees Krishna sitting over there in meditation with tears just running out of his, pouring from his eyes in oodles and oodles, tears pouring from his eyes. And Narad Muni didn't really want to disturb him. And then after a while, because Krishna is Dwarkadish, so he has his duties as a king. So he understood he had to go back to his assembly, his court, he had to do his daily duties. So Krishna broke his meditation almost reluctantly. And he saw Narad Muni and said, Narad, why didn't you call me before? And Narad said, Prabhu, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that because you were just so much in trance and you were just crying so profusely. And I didn't have the heart to really disturb you because I was almost frightened to ask you what the matter is. I've been to your palaces, all the mothers, all your children, they are fine. And so Krishna says, oh, that is because these tears, I didn't will them to come from my eyes. They are spontaneous. And do you know why, Narada? Because they are remembering my pure devotees. I'm crying to see just how much my pure devotees love me. And that is what makes me cry as well. So that is what Krishna thinks about pure devotees. And so we see in every other verse, or in every other chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other Shastra, we see why pure devotees are so much glorified with so many examples. Now, a big part of bhakti, that pure devotion, which we see is that we understand that Krishna created this material world because the jivas defected from the spiritual world and wanted to live here independently, and Krishna allowed them to play around just like parents allow children to play with toy kitchen tools, but they don't, even if the mother gives toy kitchen utensils to a child, that is not able to cook real food. But Krishna gives that to all of us in this material world to, play with this non-real material world before we are purified, and then we go back to Godhead. And how does he purify this? He purifies us because he defines what is right and wrong right at the beginning to Lord Brahma. He defines that, and the Vedas lay down rules about what is right and what is wrong, and the Vedas defines what is dharma and what is adharma. So when we are talking about pure bhakti, pure bhaktas, the devotees, we understand that these are people who love Krishna in the way that, it's that spontaneous love, but that spontaneous love embeds everything of dharma, because you cannot separate love without what Krishna thinks about, or how Krishna can love us. Krishna is not going to love us if we walk in the path of adharma. Krishna will only love us if we walk in the path that will make Krishna happy. And what makes Krishna happy? Walking in the path of dharma. that is what makes Krishna happy. And when Krishna is happy, we are automatically happy because we are part and parcel of Krishna. And so that is the reason we see why Krishna starts, even the Bhagavad Gita starts with Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra Samaveta Yuyutsava. We see even the Bhagavad Gita starting with Dharma, and we see the Bhagavad Gita ending with that key instruction in the final verses, 1866, where Krishna says, "Abandon all dharmas and just surrender unto me, sarva dharman parityajan mamekam sharanam vraja." Now, this final teaching is the culmination of everything, culmination of bhakti. You just give up everything, all, even dharma, give up all religion, and then just surrender unto me. That is what pure bhakti is. But then this dharma, Krishna has defined in various ways. It does mean one's swadharma, and we've been talking about how one has to have one's own duties. You know, according to the Varnashram system, we talked about how that was the first step that Ramananda Raya told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that pleasing Krishna, or reaching perfection, is just doing one's swadharma. And then from swadharma, slowly and slowly, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu led him to pure Krishna prema. So swadharma is a big part of dharma. But then it's also religiosity. And then ultimately Krishna says that you don't even have to, when you reach that stage, you just surrender everything. And you surrender even all kinds of religions, and you just surrender unto me. And that is what, defines the pure bhakta, the pure devotee, as we see, in so many examples, whether it's Ambarish Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, and ultimately we see Radharani. But at the same time, and that I talk about dharma over here because we are talking about Vidura, who's Dharmaraj himself. So to understand, we have talked about Vidura in many ways. We have defined Vidura's devotion towards Krishna in many ways in the previous chapters. So just touching upon it now, that yes, Maitri Muni is reminding us again about Vidura, who is Dharmaraj himself, and how best can we really understand dharma, not just through Vidura, but when we actually see how these pure bhaktas, how these pure devotees are different and disassociate themselves from adharma, from what Krishna dislikes. And so we see that, whether it's Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, Shishupal, they refused to surrender to Krishna. They were envious of Krishna, and their ego-filled senses did not allow themselves to walk in the path of dharma. Even Duryodhana. But the thing is, there are there are examples in the Shastra which tells us that, and especially how important it is in Kali Yuga, which tells us how very difficult it is to give up adharma and completely walk in the path of dharma, because there's such a fine line between both. But not only that, sometimes people even knowingly follow the path of dharma. And why just us? We are just, and I speak for myself, just common people. Even Duryodhana, he said, Janami dharman na chame pravritti. Janami dharman na chame pravritti. Janami dharman na chame nivritti. It comes in I think, Pandav Gita, in the Mahabharata as well. And what does it mean? Duryodhana is telling me, yes, I understand. Yeah, Krishna went as a messenger to Duryodhana. He had counsel from so many people telling him not to do what he was doing to the Pandavas, not to torture them so much. But then what does Duryodhana say? Janami, I know. Dharma nachame pravritti. But I don't have any pravritti, nachame nivritti. I know what is right, but I'm not drawn to it. I know what is wrong, but I cannot stay away from it. And this is what Duryodhana is saying. Whatever I'm made to do, I know what is dharma. I cannot do it. I'm not drawn to dharma. I know what is adharma. I know what is wrong, but I cannot stay away from it. And so that is it. So Duryodhana speaks to Krishna. He admits that his struggle between moral knowledge and his actions. But this contrasts with the pure devotees like Arjuna, who acknowledges his flaws, but then he surrenders unto Krishna for guidance. Okay, as we see, and that is why we see, and that is how we define the pure devotees. It's not that pure devotees are always faultless, but the pure devotees, they acknowledge their faults, their flaws, and then they surrender to Krishna. And so that brings us to Vidura and his dynasty, because we are told that Vidura it comes from the Puru dynasty. But Vidura, we see who is Vidura. He's Dharmaraj himself. And he was faulted, he was cursed by Mandavya Rishi, because Mandavya Rishi questioned his judgment as Dharmaraj, as Dharmaraj. Vidura had given punishment to Mandavya Rishi for something he had done when he was only a child. And Mandavya Rishi reminded him that as a child, you don't fall under the laws of karma. And so he was cursed. And Vidura, did he protest that? No. So as a great Bhakta, Dharmaraj, he's a Mahajan, one of the greatest devotees of Krishna, he acknowledged his flaws. And he surrendered to the Lord, and he took birth as Vidura. And that shows us that, yes, this is another side to being a pure devotee, and why the pure devotees are so much glorified, because being in this material world, we all come under the modes of material nature. We all come under Maya. So it is so very natural to fall. Even if the greatest of devotees, how many times did Lord Brahma Viman, that Leela, how many times does Indra fall? So great devotees fall, but the great devotee is able to acknowledge his fault and then surrender. And that is the reason they are called great devotees. That is the reason Maitreya Muni calls Vidura a great devotee, because this is a devotee who understands now what is wrong, what is adharma, and what is dharma. And this is a devotee who has chosen to just walk in the path of dharma. And this is the reason, and Maitreya Muni, he even talks about the dynasty, further highlighting the fact of a whole lineage of great devotees. Some of them, where there have been further a history of devotees falling and then picking themselves up and surrendering. So Maitreya Muni is praising Vidura, saying that the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees, because all the descendants of the family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. And the dynasty of Puru was full of devotees. Why? We are told because they were not attached to the impersonal Brahman. They do not think of themselves as being equal to the Lord. They did not think of themselves only to, transcend this material universe and just be one with the Lord. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. That is not where they stopped. They went ahead. They went ahead to Krishna Prema, and that is the reason they are great devotees. And so they were worthy to be rendered service to. And because Vidura was one of the descendants of the family, naturally he was engaged in in spreading glories of the Lord, and he was really, really worthy to be worshipped and worthy to be glorified as a devotee himself. Well, not worshipped, but glorified, as Maitri was doing. Now, why is it relevant that in the Maitri is reminding us that Vidura comes from the dynasty of King Puru? Because again, showing us just how great pure devotees are. And again, what we were discussing just a while ago, how the pure devotees are able to find their faults and then surrender unto Krishna, especially in moments of challenges, where there are challenges in life. And so King Puru, we understand, who was the greatest, who was the youngest son of King Yayati, and who agreed to exchange his youth for his father's old age. And Yayati was, he was cursed. Yayati was cursed by sage Shukracharya, because, there was a great history of how Yayati married Shukracharya's daughter, but she brought a maidservant along with her, who actually was the princess. And although Shukracharya asked Yayati not to be in a relationship with the maid, Yayati could not resist his senses. And so we see how Yayati gets into a relationship with Sharmishta, who was the maidservant of Devyani, who was the daughter of Shukracharya and Yayati's wife. And because of this, Yayati was cursed. And because of the curse, Yayati, the curse caused him to age prematurely. And so to regain his youth, Yayati asked all of his sons to transfer their youth to him, just so that he can continue enjoying himself, and that is the pull of senses, especially when we are talking about physical senses, that, the want of physical sense gratification. It's just so strong that it makes people, a father asking his sons to give their youth to him, just so that he can continue to enjoy his senses. But then none of the sons agreed, apart from Puru. So all of Yayati's sons, except Puru, refused to do that. And Puru agreed to exchange this out of his love for his father. And because of this, because Puru agreed to do this, because to give up his youth, King Yayati was so pleased that in gratitude, he made Puru, although he was the youngest son, he made Puru his heir to the throne, and not any of the other sons who were older than Puru. But so Puru, we see, is the ancestor of the Kuru dynasty, which includes the Pandavas and the Kauravas, the two main important families in the Mahabharata. But again, we see even the Pandavas, they all come from King Puru. And Vidura, he was also born out of, in the same family. He was, he is related to Dhritarashtra and Pandu, their step brother. So we see after, but just to finish off, just quickly mention Yayati. He does realize that after, he starts enjoying, but he does realize that, all this comes to nothing. He loses everything, he loses his prime, he gets back his prime because Puru gives his youth to him. But then his desire, when he keeps on wanting to satisfy his senses, he just realizes that all this comes to nothing. And so Yayati really gives everything to King Puru, and then he surrenders unto the Lord. And so we see that even Yayati, by mentioning that Vidura comes from this dynasty, we are being told how this is such a great dynasty. You know, we have the king Yayati, who actually fell to his faults, but then regained his senses again, and he surrendered to the Lord. We have a son, Puru, who actually is such a great devotee. You know, he even wanted to give up all his senses, even his youth, to his father, and a person who followed Dharma throughout. And in that dynasty comes King Kuru as well. And in that dynasty of King Kuru comes the Pandavas and then Vidura. So a dynasty of great devotees, a dynasty who really sticks to the path of Dharma, a dynasty who has Dharmaraj himself. And that is who Vidura is. So that is the first bit of the verse where there's so much importance around establishing that Vidura needs to be glorified as a great devotee because he comes from such a great dynasty. However, secondly, Maitreya Rishi also says that they are all pure devotees, the Pandavas and their descendants, they're all pure devotees because they are chiefly the devotee. Another definition of a pure devotee is that they are just devoted to the Supreme Lord. They just love the Supreme Lord. That is their only occupation. Every other occupation that they have, whatever varna or ashram they're in, that is their secondary occupation. Their primary occupation is loving the Lord. Everything that they do is centered around Krishna. So they are Bhagavat Pradhana, a Bhagavat Uttama, as it's being said here. And one can be a Bhagavat God, Uttama, topmost. One can be one if he is constantly thinking about the Lord. And we see the kings in this dynasty. We talked about Rajarshis the other day, the Raj and the Rishis, they were kings, but they were also Rishis. They had the qualities to understand what is right and what is wrong. And so we see that someone who is a pure devotee, they become, it doesn't matter whether they are Kshatriyas, they are Shudras, or they are Vaishyas, it does not really matter. They can be pure Brahmins just because of their qualities. And this is what Maitreya Muni is trying to say by telling Vidura that, yes, you are linked to this dynasty. I'm talking about kings. Yes, you're not a king. You are the son of a Shudra, but you are a pure devotee yourself. Why? Because you have the qualities of a pure devotee. We see that so many times mentioned in the Shastras. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see in chapter 8, chapter 8, Madhya Lila 8, 128, Krishnadas Kaviraj writes, Kiva Vipra Kiva Nashi Shudra Kenenoi, Jai Krishna Tattva Betta Shai Guru Hoy. Or whether one is a Brahmana, a sannyasi, or a Shudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the science of Krishna. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur further in that, mentions that one should not think that because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born a Brahmana and was situated in the topmost spiritual order as a sannyasi, it was improper for him to receive instructions from Ramananda Raya, as we talked about last week, who belonged to the Shudra class. Because Mahaprabhu informed Raya that knowledge of Krishna consciousness is more important than caste. And in the system of Varnashram Dharma, there are various duties for the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and the Shudras. So the Brahmana is supposed to be the spiritual master, but as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned, everyone is capable of becoming a Brahmana or a spiritual master, because the knowledge of Krishna consciousness is on the platform of spiritual soul. Varnashram system, as we were talking about last week, is still in the material form. But when one is self-realized, when one is a pure bhakta, when one is a true devotee, Krishna consciousness, it is not in the material form. Krishna consciousness, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, it is in the platform of the spirit soul. So whether a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra like Vidura, it does not matter. Maitri Muni reestablishes that you are a great devotee. And it's, there's another beautiful song which says, Muchi hoy shuchi jodi Krishna bhaje, shuchi hoy muchi jodi Krishna tyage. So someone who does Krishna bhajan, even, a Shudra becomes a Brahmana. But if a Brahmin son, if he tyags, if he gives up Krishna consciousness, he becomes a Shudra. And so we see in the verse, Maitri Muni says, Babu Vite, I can't pronounce properly, Babu Vite Hajeta Kirti Malam. Apologies for my awful pronunciation. So Maitri Muni is saying that you are born in that family, in that wonderful family, okay? Babu Vite Hajita Kirti Malam. Kirti Malam, wonderful. This family is full of wonderful glories. And so the Lord's glories are also talked about over here. And how do such pure devotees talk about the Lord glories? Pure devotees like you, Vidura, why is it important that you, and coming from such a wondrous lineage, why is it important that you and nobody else does the Lord's glories or listens to the Lord's glories? Because of Nutanayasi, as the verse says, because the Lord's glories becomes newer and newer. So the Lord's glories are considered to be Nutanayasi, or newer and newer, because the name and the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they create newer and newer feelings. No matter how many times we listen to a pastime, every single time they give us newer and newer and newer feelings. They raise newer feelings within us. But then, if that, and that is the reason we see, Rupa Goswami, great devotee like Rupa Goswami, he says that I really need hundreds of years. I need thousands of tongues to be able to speak about Krishna. I need hundreds of years to listen to Krishna Katha, or glories of Krishna. And so we are told that a devotee who is inspired by the super soul within us, they advance in this Krishna consciousness by listening, or by feeling or internalizing this variety of variegatedness of the Lord and his pastime, which induces newer and newer feelings within us. And so what happens? The devotee does not feel stereotyped. He does not feel that he's in a stagnant position by listening to the same pastimes over and over again. And in this material world, we see, for example, we see chanting. When we chant any material name, after a while, one will feel tired chanting a few times. However, we see when we chant the names of Krishna, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, even if we chant all day and night, if we get that taste, it actually becomes happier and happier and gives us more and more happiness. So as chanting is increased, it will become more new, and it becomes fresher. And so we see Srila Rupa Goswami saying that, somehow if he could only get millions of years and tongues, then he could relish this spiritual bliss even more by chanting the Maha Mantra more. And so there is nothing really uninspiring for for a very advanced devotee. Nothing that is uninspiring in devotion for a great devotee like Vidura. We also see that mentioned in, in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 4, verse 30, and in chapter 30, verse 20, which says that always engaging in the activities of the devotional service, it makes devotees feel ever increasingly fresh and new, because we have the super soul within us. And so that super soul encourages us to move from that Brahman realization through that super soul, through that Paramatma realization, and it takes us to the Bhagavan realization. And that is why that is what is mentioned in the purport as well, that these great devotees, they don't stop at just overcoming Maya. They don't stop at the Brahman realization, just, getting one or becoming one with the effulgence of the Lord. But they are taken through the super soul, they are taken through the Paramatma realization to the topmost realization of Bhagavan. And that is what really is, because even the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that, I am situated in everybody's heart. And Tesam Satata Yuktanam, Bhagavad Gita 10.10, Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yena Mam Upayanti Te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. The Lord gives them the Bhagavan realization. Not to everybody, but to those who are constantly devoted to him, like Vidura as Maitri Muni. And that's the reason why we are constantly talked about, why we should glorify such great devotees. Jiva Goswami, he says in this connection that the super soul, who's the plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead, he reveals himself, not just reveals himself as, he takes us to Bhagwan Swarup, but he makes it, he makes the Lord and devotion towards him ever increasingly new. This is the, this is the newness that brings more and more taste to devotion. So every single time, one wants to love the Lord in some way, whether, through in any one of those, the 9 types of the Navada Bhakti, Shravanam Kirtanam, right up to Atmasara Smaranam, any path we take to, there is that newness that comes to us. And that is what is being referred to us in this verse as well, and in the purport. That newness comes when one talks to a true devotee. Because there is this very feeling that the pastimes, the name, everything has, they invoke freshness, and the transcendental feelings that are invoked, they are ever fresh. They are always fresh, always changing for the better. So we'd say then why is it that not everybody is able to feel that? Not everyone is allowed to feel that, because we are not qualified. So if we do not hear, if you're not able to feel this newer and newer aspect of the Lord's pastime or name or relish it, it does not mean that, it just means that we are not chanting properly, because our surrender to Krishna is still not complete. As soon as we surrender, that is when, we, first of all, we are told, and I don't think I'll have time to finish everything. So first of all, we are told that, yes, when we take to devotion, there is that initial understanding that, yes, we have to now, we are practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, so we have to follow these regulations, the 4 regulative principles. We start following that, and we understand what is dharma, what is adharma a bit. We are still not very much convinced, or as we practice more, we are a bit convinced, but then we come to a stage where a bit like Duryodhana, Ravana, they were great devotees. Ravana was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. Hiranyakashipu, with great devotee of Lord Brahma, they all knew what dharma is. They all knew what adharma is. But like Duryodhan said, I don't have any liking towards dharma. I am pulled by adharma. So similarly, a devotee, when they start the process slowly and slowly, they understand, okay, what is right, what is wrong. And then slowly and slowly, they reach the stage, when they reach the stage of being a pure bhakta, being a pure devotee, that is when everything that they hear becomes newer and newer. Even now, as a practicing devotee, we see how we relish more and more and more every single time. And so we see that, you know, this variety, there is no stagnation in that. And so that is why Prabhupada says that when you increase the sound of the, you know, holy, if you think that your mind is going somewhere, Prabhupada doesn't say that, you know, start meditating, think about something else, you know, don't let your mind go away. Prabhupada says, if you see that your mind is going somewhere else, increase the sound of the holy name. Because when you increase the sound of the holy name, that holy name, which is non-different from Krishna, that holy name will take care of everything. That holy name will bring you back to bring your mind back to Krishna. And so Maitreya over here is touching upon these points that, yes, Vidura, you come from this great dynasty. And he makes us remember once again why it's a great dynasty, who are great, who can qualify as great devotees. Why is it so important to understand what is dharma and what is adharma, and especially talking about Vidura, who's Dharmaraj himself? And then why is it so very important to hear or listen to or discuss about Krishna with a person like Vidura? Because every single time such pure devotees, every single time, they make these transcendental hearings even more fresh, even more new, by as they listen to it more and more and more. And because you know, there is absolutely no stagnation in bhakti when one talks to such a devotee. And in one of my previous classes, I think I kind of mentioned why it is so very important to discuss such matters, transcendental matters, with devotees, great devotees like Vidura, because like Uddhava, he was talking about discussing things with Uddhava. Every single devotee perceives the Lord in his or her unique way. And the devotees are just so eager to exchange that. Yes, you perceive Krishna in that way. I would love to hear that. And there's happiness hearing that. I perceive Krishna in this way. To me, Krishna is a son. To you, Krishna is a lover. To him or her, Krishna is a sakha, a friend. Let's just hear. The more we hear about this, the more one relishes. And so, starting off chapter 8, Maitri is establishing once again, right from the first, that now I'm starting this chapter talking to a great devotee like Vidura, and also saying loud and clear that this exchange between us is going to be very, very, very pleasing, because this exchange of Krishna Katha between us is only going to make the discussion fresher and newer to everyone. So with that, we start off the chapter in this verse 1. And now Maitreya is going to give more and more, it will start giving the answers to Vidura. So Hare Krishna, really sorry. There were just so many other points, and I don't think I managed to say it properly or cover it properly. So do apologize for any mistakes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much for today's session. It didn't look as if you had no time to prepare. It was excellent. And maybe you have some points that are not covered and you can cover it next time, because we'll still be in the first prime verses even by Saturday, since from Monday to Thursday we are going to have a visitor at the temple, Chaitanya Ashra Prabhuji from Delhi. He's a temple president there, so he'll be talking to us on different subjects. So I think Friday, Saturday will still be around this area. So please save your points and enlighten us. But thank you very much for this excellent session, and also emphasizing that, okay, yes, you can be from a great lineage of kings or rishis and be in love with Krishna, and at the same time you gave example of Duryodhan, who was from the same lineage, but he just couldn't accept Krishna to be the supreme. And then we have Vidura, who is also from the same lineage, but a son of a Shudrani, and yet he is such a great devotee of the Lord. So whatever is your lineage, I feel that the love for Krishna can be imbibed by anybody. So thank you for making that point very clear. We open it up to any questions or comments. Are there any questions or comments from the group? I know we have exhausted our time.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam to you too.
Very nicely explained the Uru dynasty up till Vidur. And in the purport, the last sentence, it gives a very good lesson for the senior devotees. That he considered the company of Vidur. He means Maitreya Rishi. Maitreya Rishi is senior and a friend of Vyasdev ji.
Yes.
And he is considering Vidur's company means junior company. So in our ISKCON society, those who are senior, and I have come across many senior devotees, they expect respect from the junior first. This sentence gives the senior must give first to the junior.
Yes.
That increases the humbleness, and more the humbleness you advance in you meet all one advance in a devotional service toward the pure devotional service. Yeah. Hare
Yes.
Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful point, and thank you for adding that to the class. Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful point.
Thank you so much for that addition, Prabhuji. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Priya Govind Prabhu, you have unmuted. Do you have a question or a comment?
No. Hare Krishna Mataji, maybe I can say something on the shloka.
Yes, Prabhuji, please.
Yes, you know how Maitreya Muni is glorifying Vindura. Sorry, I'm not putting my video. You'll forgive me for that.
Oh, no, that's right.
And also, I was thinking about it, and I was saying also, as we are also united by Shira Prabhupada, and we belong to Shira Prabhupada's family. And for that, we are able to develop same nature by association. And that way, Shira Prabhupada becomes glorified because we are Prabhupada Nugas, isn't it? Followers of Shira Prabhupada.
Yes.
Or rather, we are Prabhupada Vamsi.
Yes.
So that is very, very important. And here, Maitreya Muni is thanking Vidura for his good association. And for that, he's thinking, oh, my Krishna consciousness is blossoming. So just in our case also, we may have difficulties in studying and understanding Bhagavad Gita. But by coming together, then we are able to effectively read and understand Bhagavatam, not Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavatam, daily Bhagavatam session, we are able to understand, and that way we are able to grow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, what wonderful points. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for adding them. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, wonderful points.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I think we have really exhausted our time and we can't take any other questions till next week. Can I request Eastern Prabhu, are you able to end the session for us today? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandot Pranam. Thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful session today. It was so informative about the Puru dynasty, and it's so nice that we were able to learn today about them. And thank you so much for that. I would like to invite each and every devotee present to unmute and chant one round of Mataji for the wonderful session.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
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 Hare,
Hare,
Rama,
Hare
Rama,
Rama, Rama
Hare
Rama, Hare Hare.
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च
Kakaropatarobhyascha
कृपा
kripa
सिन्धुभ्य एव च
sindhubhya cha patitanam
पतितानां
pavanebhyo
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो
Vaishnavebhyo
नमः
namo namaha.
ग्रंथ श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय
Jai.
Jai.
श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय हर ग्रेस पांचाली कर माता जी की जय
Jai.
all glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
हरे
Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
A full session.
Jai,
जय
Jai.
हरे कृष्ण थैंक यू
Krishna.
माता जी हरि
Thank you,
बोल
Mataji. Thank you. Hare Bol.